Good morning, everyone. Welcome to an October day, an October Saturday morning, and waking to the new dawn morning chats. Kristin and I are really excited to be here. We kind of took a little hiatus on September, so it's great to be back. And today we have an extension of our conversation around spirituality, but it's kind of taken a twist and a turn and a little different focus. So Kristin posted a graphic, an image, a few weeks ago, and it got me thinking. And so we had a little chat behind the scenes about, would this be something like a framework for us to start diving in a little bit differently to the idea of spirituality. So let me just run through what this graphic looked like. And you can think of it in a couple different ways, and we'll talk about that. But I'm going to just introduce it as a series of events in your life, knowing that sometimes events are not completely sequential. They can jump steps. They can cycle back, and we'll get into that in a few. But the first one is having mindful thoughts, and then loving actions, a conscious routine, and then a fulfilling journey. Finding our harmonious way of being, and then it's simply your soul's essence. So this one really spoke to me, and apparently it spoke to Kristin too. What do you think, Kristin?
You know, I've seen this post a couple of times. They're words by someone that I've been following for the last couple of years, and I think what I love most about this process, or the way that these steps are laid out. And I wanted to kind of go back to even like the second step you mentioned with loving actions, where the wording of the post actually says self-loving actions. And this process that's laid out is an inward process. It's going within. It's having those mindful thoughts, whatever it is in the world or in your own personal life experience, that is kind of like waking you up a little bit, maybe thinking about something, seeing something a little bit maybe differently. But the first step after that, though, is self-loving action. Mm-hmm. And I know that we're all like super eager to love on the world, which, yes, ultimately is also part of the process. But it's super important during this awakening, especially now that we're all being pushed and influenced to do so, sometimes very abruptly or very intensely. We'll say intensely, to take it all inward. It's really about that inward process.
Yeah, I agree. And it's interesting, just pausing for a moment on the first one, mindful thoughts. And so many times when we think of going inward and having a meditative experience, in other words, practicing meditation, we often want to just move the thoughts along. And that's not the nuance necessarily of a meditative experience. A meditative experience includes thoughts, it includes emotions, and it includes open space where the mind is calm and slows down. Mm-hmm. The idea of thoughts, mindful thoughts, everything's mindful. I'll just say that. And it'll come in different intensities, like you mentioned. And then that self-loving action that you mentioned, that maps with the whole concept of compassion and self-compassion. And we can practice it on others, like you mentioned, and we really want to go out and be compassionate. We want to show up in a compassionate and empathetic way, right?
Right.
Often, though, we are not quite whole yet with that
Right.
practice for ourselves.
And it doesn't mean that we stop engaging in the outer world until we're completely whole and healed, because that is a process, and that is really the epitome of the life journey. It's a continual healing to wholeness, kind of recalibrating with, our soul essence, and it's ongoing. So it doesn't mean that we just stop engaging, but I think any of us who've been in this process of awakening and awakening to the soul, we know and have experienced that the more that we come into like that self-love and that self-acceptance, the more able and better equipped we are to really show up in authentic, compassionate, accepting, loving nature to the world around us. But going back to that first step of mindful thoughts, and you said a couple of things that gave me a couple of thoughts. The one is, yeah, I mean, it's not about not having any thoughts, even in meditation. I mean, the brain has one function, to think, and it does a really good job of it, But to me, mindful thoughts are those really subtle moments in our life where we've been going about our business, doing what we do, doing what we do, doing what we do, and all of a sudden there's just that little subtle little flip that's like, wait, why am I doing it this way? Why am I thinking this way? Why do I see that situation that way? Why am I eating this food? Like those little just kind of habits of, the life we live. And then something very subtly, we just like come over here and like, and that to me is like a mindful thought.
Yes.
It's giving consciousness and perspective. And to me, mindful thoughts occur when we have questions.
That too, I agree. And thinking about the internal process, where we can use meditation as a framework for it, because
Right.
when we're going in, we have that sense, and that's really that bubble around us. It's
Right.
so being mindful and having those thoughts. I think you just described what happens when we're running on autopilot through all the things that
Right.
we're doing.
Right.
And suddenly we realize, oh, this is what it is. This is me being in the world this way. And turning that inward
Right.
is about having the thoughts and the emotions, letting them happen, letting them flow and arise and move on, if that. But rather than getting totally engaged and ruminate on each thought, ruminate on each emotion, and dive in, you can lean into it and observe it, recognize that it exists, and use that as a practice to become a little more detached.
Right.
And I think what you're saying about seeing yourself doing in the world all of these activities, we are enmeshed in them. So all of that is the way it happens. The way we perceive it and the way we respond to it is the difference.
Yeah. And, you just, said, that process of being in that more meditative kind of observation mode, of ourselves and detaching. When we do that for ourselves and we begin to implement that practice like for ourselves, it also enables us to detach, and we can circle back to this conversation another time, but it's really important. As you know, we started this journey over 4 years ago together, Waking to the New Dawn, and all about that we knew that we were entering an intense cycle of the old ways of being, dismantling and putting our energy towards creating something new.
That's right.
For ourselves, though, like the first step is dismantling those old ways for ourselves, our old patterns, our old ways of being that no longer serve. As we're doing that individually, we're also witnessing this parallel of dismantling of these intense and large structures of old ways of being.
Yes.
And it's really important during this awakening process, and in order to be able to go through this whole process of steps that you laid out and get to creating something new simply by being in that soul essence. But it's really important to detach and not get attached to what is happening in the world.
And it's an energetic situation, I think, more than
Yes.
anything else. So
Yeah.
we look at the environment around us. It's about energetic shifting and
Yeah.
evolution. And getting back to the mindful thoughts and what you said about detaching and being able to detach from our world within us and our world outside of us, then we get these little sparks. It's almost as if that's the key to the lock. And when we turn it, then we realize that we are experiencing those self-loving actions because we have the opportunity, we've opened the space to be able to experience self-love. When we're enmeshed in ruminating thoughts and ruminating emotions and the drama of everything that happens because of our thoughts and because of the world, we don't have room, or we don't have the perspective to be able to have self-love. So in some ways, even though we said that these aren't sequential, they are interdependent.
Yeah.
Without one, it's tough to get into the other one. If
And I think they're sequential, and even if they're rapid, you know, I feel like that, that process, that cycle does, like, kind of keep reoccurring, even if they're kind of rapid, or you know what I mean.
yeah, they're like sparks that
Yeah.
ignite of
Yeah.
something else, and then that something else becomes a conscious routine. So
Mhm.
what that is then is really just unique to ourselves. Each of us have
Yeah.
our own conscious routine
Yeah.
based
And
on our consciousness. Yeah.
And then we bring in that word conscious, which is awareness, which is awakening.
Which is
So
mindful.
it's being more mindful of the choices that you're making, the way you're showing up for yourself, the thoughts that you're having. It's like bringing it to the forefront so that you can create that kind of conscious routine and that conscious habit and shift out of those old patterns, right?
Right.
It has to, it's like, it's bringing it kind of like we're not getting away from our thoughts, right? We're having a mindful thought, we're shifting that into a more self-loving action. And then we have to, for a while in this next step, kind of be a little more conscious, a little more thought, about it.
A lot of times that's described as training the mind.
Right.
Training the mind because the mind has patterns based on the lives that we're living. And until we start really recognizing that finding mindful thoughts to create self-loving actions, and then have a conscious routine that in some ways continues to be cyclical, not in a way that it's a closed circle, but more like it's a spiral
Yeah.
moving through
Yeah.
and with us.
Hmm.
That's when we arrive at the fulfilling journey. So, so many times we want to go, well, I want a fulfilling journey. I'm going to go there. So what do I need for that? But I think the more I look at this framework, I realize that there are some significant things that are foundational that if we skip some of these,
Right.
the fulfilling journey is like a house of cards. It doesn't have the support system and the foundation for us to, when those times get a little rugged and the
Hmm.
mind wants to go back into the old patterns, we want a substantial foundation there through that conscious routine to be able to hold us up.
Yeah. And I think that the main kind of shift in the foundation that we're all experiencing during our unique individual awakening processes is that we have to take that inward, because most of us, to some degree or another, we've been influenced. Our foundation has been influenced on the outer voices of the world,
Yes.
the people around us, the narrative around us, the TV shows we watch, the things that we, just all of it. We've been existing in from the outward influences of our thoughts, our routines, how we go about everything. That is the big shift. That is
Yes.
awakening. It's shedding all that off and taking the process inward. This is the awakening process, taking it inward. And so that we can, one, create something new for ourselves, which in turn creates something new for the reality around us and the world around us, coming back into a new world in that, organic order of being.
Yeah.
So that is, for me, like the greatest thing that's happening is we're shifting our foundation from an outer foundation to an inner foundation. That's the new dawn.
That's very cool. And that really gets at a detached way of being, is that whatever's going on in the external world isn't going to shake us or tear out our roots, so to speak. And something that you said then about the routine and shutting out things from the external world, in some ways, it's about discerning what from the external world currently supports and nurtures and nourishes us.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's not as if we are just becoming recluses and we're not getting involved in what's going on.
Right.
We're able to step back and be detached from all of it in a perceptual way because we're strong from within. And then we truly know ourselves to be able to say, that fits. This environment fits. These people are nourishing me. And
Yeah.
I don't mean to say you pick and choose, but you
Yeah.
do in some
No,
ways. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. I think you do start picking and choosing. That, I think, is self-loving actions. You start picking and choosing what supports me best. It's being aware, like almost like more
Right.
keenly aware. And maybe we can talk about this next time because I really love this, but divine design. When we go inward and we start awakening to our divine design as a sovereign being, as a divine being, having, that God essence within, being the creator, but, all those things, we start experiencing that so many things in the world, or even in our own world that we've created for ourselves, don't support who we are in our divine design. who we are in our essence. So it's not about not being aware of everything around you. It's that keen awareness of everything around you that leads you to the first step,
That's
having a
right.
more mindful thought. So it's
Yes.
not about separating yourself from it and ignoring it. I don't want to see it, it's seeing it from that higher perspective, like, whoa, that part of my world, the world, whichever, it doesn't support, who I am as soul, who I am as a divine being. And it starts that that's that first mindful thought.
Right, and that's where we might cycle back and go a little deeper because there's a
Exactly.
recognition of a consciousness there that our
Yeah.
conscious routine may not be completely aligned. And, I like to think of the conscious routine as our dharmic path and
Right.
what we
Right.
choose to do with purpose in our lives and why we're here. And
Right.
that's the fulfilling journey. So
Right.
we move through these stages or cyclic stages in a way that if we get too attached to an outcome,
Right.
that fulfilling journey that everyone wants, it will elude us because we have then taken our attention to another result rather than the present moment.
Right.
So in some ways, these stages can be accommodating, and in other ways, they can trap us. And
Right.
that's why a self-study, like you said, going inward, really getting to know our inner truth, our soul, is something we want to stay in touch with.
Oh, we have to stay in touch with it, or and not, we're all on our own unique awakening journeys. Not everyone, in this stage and in this, current lifetime is maybe going to wake and maybe even going to step into the new. And that's what we're seeing a lot of happening now. We're sort of we're at a choice point for ourselves individually and collectively as humanity. Are you going to stay attached to the old ways, clinging to them, grabbing onto them? Oh my gosh, this is falling apart, and getting swept away and caught into all of that? Or are you going to take the opportunity to connect with those more mindful thoughts, to take the journey inward and create something new? Like, we're all going to have, unique experiences, and there's not one that's right or that's wrong. We're all here, to experience different levels of our own awakening, our own soul's awakening, in this life. But yeah, I think that we'll have to pick up, the rest of this cycle and talk about them
Mm-hmm.
probably, during our next chat.
And one thing that came to mind, just as I know we are ready to close, one thing that came to mind with what you said about the dismantling the old and bringing in new. I think regardless of who we are and what our dharma is for this life, we each, like you said, have a unique path. And to me, as we go inward and begin to go deeper into our inner truth and trust it, and then think in ways around it to support it, have emotions in ways around it to support it, and then finally act in ways to support it. It's not necessarily what the external world is building. It's our own dismantling of our own ways, of the old ways and patterns that we have always been living. So we've come with and given a program and an alignment by the external world, like you mentioned. At the same time, that dismantling occurs within us.
Well, and it's honestly, it's going to be the individual dismantling and creation that's what's going to reflect on the outer world and the world that we live in.
Yes,
I mean, the outer world isn't doing it for us.
that's right. That's the
You
point I
know,
was trying to support that you said. That's
yeah,
right.
yeah, it's an inner journey to create the outer world that best supports our divine design.
Great. I think we continue this conversation and get going on another time
Yeah,
when we can get together, because I feel the energy building around it,
yeah.
and we could go on for hours, I think, at this point. So let's take those hours and move them into the future, just a few weeks, and see where we go. So I would like to just say thank you to everyone who came today, and the recording will be up. I can't promise when, but sooner than usual. So
And
namaste.
namaste. I would like to say just one quick thing: trust in this process. There's always a divine perspective that we may not be able to see or be aware of, but just stay inward and stay in your own truth and trust.